Right next to me, I said Natalie attired, and you are very well dressed today.
Looking dapper.
And Mr. Jeff Landry, State Attorney General, comes in and said, if I had known, I would have worn my flip-flops. Who knew the state AG had flip-flops? Thank you for joining us today. It is our pleasure.
Always, it's great to be in the studio.
Yeah, you're in town. You're going to be at the Rotary Club today at noon.
That's right. I came in town yesterday. I was in town almost all day yesterday, meeting with legislators and other business owners, and just making my way around Shreveport, Bossier.
Let's get right to the juice. You and the governor, let's put some gloves on and get in the ring. What's the latest?
Well, I mean, the problem is, I keep telling people who ask me what the problem is that I don't have a problem with the governor. The governor has a problem with the law. Okay, and the issues is that we have a process in this country and in this state by which we make law, and then we expect everyone else to follow the law, and so elected officials should be following it too, and that's the problem. The governor just doesn't. He wants to circumvent the legislature and not follow the law.
Explain to us how.
How? Well, it's okay. So it's this simple. So a couple of weeks after we got sworn into office, the governor issued an executive order. Basically mandating that boards, commissions, and agencies, departments put in place policies in their contracts and in their own employee contracts, language to protect transgender people. Okay, and that's a problem because there is no protected class that the legislature has not afforded that group a protected status. I.e.,
in other words, he de facto said transgender people are a protected class under the law.
Right. And then right after that, in support of that executive order, he, as part of his package of bills, put into the legislature a bill to create a protected class for him. That bill failed miserably in bipartisan fashion. So the legislature said that is not a class that we want to protect.
So pardon me, he knew when he made the executive order that he was in fact circumventing the law and tried to
affirm it,
surreptitiously fix.
I mean, you could assume that based upon that fact pattern is what I would say. So
and then he required contracts with the state,
right, to have that language.
To have the language.
Okay, so it gets better. So then, after the bill fails, 40 plus legislators wrote a request to me, which is kind of unprecedented to have that many legislators ask for the same opinion from the Attorney General as to whether or not the executive order was constitutional and lawful. We, in a very lengthy opinion, said no. The governor continued to proceed. Because I have to sign all the legal service contracts for the state of Louisiana, I choose the lawyers for the state of Louisiana who are going to represent them, decided not to sign contracts that had that language in them. Now, there were some other issues on some other contracts. There were a multitude of issues as to why I wasn't signing some of the legal service contracts. The governor and I had a difference of opinion. The governor said, no, Attorney General, you just have to listen to me. And I said, no, that's not how the Constitution works. He sued me. We won. He lost. The judge said, no, the Attorney General is completely within his constitutional powers in regards to the executing of legal contracts. The governor then said, well, you know what? My executive order is still binding. The court didn't rule on that. I said, okay, well, let's ask the court as to whether or not your executive order is in fact lawful. If in fact you get the right to not only execute the law, but also to create law with absent legislative approval. And so that's where we are today. We went last week, we went to the court and asked for what's called a declaratory judgment. So to have the court declare whether or not his executive order is binding, if it is in fact law. We believe that it is not. We believe that the statutes are clear, that the legislature and your representatives and senators are the only ones that can make law.
Now, he's lost every step of the way so far in this case, in this instance, right?
Correct. That's correct. He lost last.
How soon do you expect the new decision?
Well, we're going to be asking for a preliminary injunction, which we probably won't get to the hearing portion of that until maybe after Halloween. And so, no trick or treat.
Do you think from day one when he issued that executive order, do you think he knew out of the box, yeah, Mr. Jeff's going to sue?
I don't think so. I think, it's disappointing because I think that he just believes that as the governor, he can just do whatever he wants. And everyone just has to abide by his particular wishes.
So in all the meetings they had, when he came up or somebody came up with we will create a new protected class by fiat, by mandate, nobody stood up and said, might be a constitutional problem there.
I guess not in his camp, they didn't. I mean, the legislature spoke real loudly to him and said, no, that's not a class we want to protect. Look, it creates huge liabilities for the state. I think we've talked about that before. This was not thought out. Most of the things that liberals do, they don't think through them. Think about the cost of implementing this. But in addition to, we've never had a protected class based upon a subjective test. Okay, this country, our state, through the legislature, has decided to create certain protected classes. Those protected classes are objective tests. Black, Hispanic, minorities. So based upon race, that's objective. Based upon sex, male, female, that's objective. This is a subjective test. Who's going to be the transgender police? Who's going to be the referee to determine whether or not a person is being discriminated against or is not?
823 at News Radio 710 Keel, Robert J. Wright and Erin McCarty, and back for another segment with State Attorney General Jeff Landry. Okay, Erin, she has been, I'm not going to say lose sleep, but her naps have been shorter because of the new
overtime rules that go into effect December 1st. A lot of people are just starting to hear about them, just starting to talk about them. You are one of 21 states that have filed suit to block the implementation, correct?
Correct. Because again, this is another example of kind of what we talked about earlier. But this is the president circumventing Congress because he can't get through certain wage laws that he wants to put in place that are basically job-killing laws. And so he creates an executive order, gets one of his agencies, like the Department of Labor, to promulgate a regulation circumventing the will of Congress. And so myself and 21 other attorney generals around the country filed suit, basically asking the federal court to enjoin these regulations until they can be heard by the court and be found to be unconstitutional.
Okay,
and
so
they are, because they're going to kill jobs.
Devil's advocate, well, wait a second. The government wants everybody to make more money. What's your counter to that?
Well, again, what I would counter to that is every time the government makes that complaint and passes some regulation, what we see is not job creation, but job loss. I mean, think about it. Over the last 8 years, the economy as a whole in this country has been growing at an anemic pace. 1%? 1%. But yet the entire time we keep piling regulation after regulation after regulation on the backs of those who create the jobs. And this is another one of those needless regulations that are only going to put additional burdens and cost people their jobs because there's just so much money that a guy's making. And then he's just got so much of it that he can spread out to his employees. As someone who owned a business, guess what? Business owners will go out there and work real hard and make sure that they're paying their employees.
As we were talking about, if you own a business and the government mandates that your costs go up, that doesn't mean you're suddenly making any more money.
Well, and it certainly doesn't. If you're paying people what you believe you can afford, okay, and then the government says no, you have to pay them more, but your revenue is only X. What do? You know what you do? You get rid of people in order to pay the other people based upon a regulation.
But
That's common sense.
But what do you say to those workers who may be listening who say, my job makes me work 50, 55 hours a week and I don't get anything for that. I feel like business is taking advantage of the worker.
Well, I think in today's atmosphere with social media, with robust economic activity, I would tell those workers that their opportunity to make more is based upon the job market out there. And when they're doing a real good job and the job market is tight, meaning more people are looking to hire, then your ability to get paid is more. Let's use back during the big oil boom up in Montana, they were paying people in McDonald's and Burger King $15, $18, $20 an hour. Why? Because the supply of labor down there was low and the demand was high. You see?
Yeah, exactly. What's going to happen with the lawsuit? What's the status?
Well, we're
timetable?
hoping that we're going to get an injunction. We'll have a hearing in front of the federal court, and we're hoping that the courts will rule with us before December 1.
Turning to the election,
Yeah.
are you anticipating
Ready to
any,
go, partner. Ready to go after those Russian hackers.
Yeah, you're going to have Russian hackers you're going to have to chase.
I mean, we're fighting George Soros and Russian hackers. I don't know.
And I saw that story too about the Soros and Louisiana is one of those states. Explain to Aaron, explain to everybody what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, what we found out through not mainstream media, but that one of the companies that sell electronic voter machines is a company that is owned by George Soros.
Whoa.
Of course, who is someone who the left certainly goes to. I guess it's kind of like the left's banker.
Yeah.
He basically
He's
puts
the
out all
piggy
the
bank.
money that funds all of the left's operations. And so those machines that we're using are owned by a company that George Soros is. I've always had a problem with electronic machines. I tell you what I think we should do. I think that when you go in there, those electronic machines should print out a receipt. And you take that receipt and you go and you put it in a box. And so if the election's challenged, it's very simple. You can then reconcile what the machine says with what you saw, what you physically saw in the box.
Hey, they got
how simple is that? It wouldn't take us any more. I mean, it'd be easy.
2 timekeepers at every NFL game. What does that tell you?
Well, I mean,
Yeah. Exactly. Rotary Club today at noon. It's a convention center. And your big topic today, what's your topic of conversation?
Being on the morning show with y'all.
No, to the Rotary Club.
Be
What's
sure to
your
introduce her
message?
from the stage. She'll love that.
You're going to say anything special to the Shreveport Rotary Club today?
Yeah, I love Shreveport Bossier.
That's awesome.
No, we're going to be talking about a lot of different issues. Some of the ones we talked about earlier. We're going to be talking about the transition that we had and the way we're trying to create a Department of Justice that works for the people of this state and educate them on what exactly we do, because we do a lot. And we got some great people working.
If you
for the
need some
department.
boxing gloves, I'll get you a pair.
No, I just need people to follow the law.
Okay.
Zinger.